I love this stage of the painting. There's so much information on the canvas that it's much easier to decide how you want to finish things up. So, I think I was mentioning that these trees shooting off the edge of the canvas were bothering me somewhat, but once I painted in the foliage that I'd already actually washed in on these two back trunks, it's fine, works for me. Needed to, really, the chroma and value was just a little too high in spots on these trunks. I just had to turn the volume down a little bit on them, that's all. They were a bit noisy. This area where I had removed that other trunk stump, I thought that needed a bit of light too, just to bring it in tune with this. And I was a little leery of it because if I'd gone too intense, I would have, light sitting next to light, sitting above light, sitting above light, sitting above light. I think it works. Next thing I have to do is get over to this side and sort out these rocks, anchor them. They're floating. Rocks don't float, at least not to my knowledge. So once I started to pay attention to what I really needed to do here, it became pretty apparent that I had to go back to dark and then work my way up. And I'm probably just going to use what I have here, but with very little white, if any white at all, because this finger of grass was drawing too much attention, pulling too much attention from everywhere else. I've removed the rock that was sitting there. But now I've got a lot of paint thinner on there and paint. I'm going to have to let it dry before I re-attack it. Well, I think these rocks are looking more grounded now. When I look through the screen on the camera, this appears to be a little too high a chroma, but I'm not sure. On the painting it looks fine to me. And ultimately, in reality, that's what you're worried about. But these rocks at least look more grounded. I changed the design a little bit. I darkened some of the lower ends, the lower edges of the rock. Also varied where the grass would meet the rock. Slightly more variations, so it appears as though there's some foliage in front of the rock. That's looking good. Me, I'm a happy guy. Well, I suppose I'm going to call this painting finished. I have it covered. Ultimately what I was after was just producing sort of a range of interesting shapes and hues, a good, a variety, and I think we've got that, of different rock structure along this shoreline. Here's the main bluff, of course. Obviously, it stands proud of the rest of the shore, but then as it gets higher, you can see that it's well anchored into the grass back here. So there's your feature, your focal area. Focal point, what's focal point? Pick a focal point. There are arguably a few of them in there. And I don't worry too much about it. If there's straight structure where you have to work with a vanishing point and things like that, I think that changes a little bit. But something like this is more illustrative, so I think it's fine without it. It's all fairly warm till we get to this edge. These rocks I cooled off in color, but most of the rock here has ultramarine blue mixes with other things in it. These rocks I went almost strictly with a cobalt blue on the cap of the rocks. Under here I'm using ultramarine, but cobalt blue is it's the prime one. It's what I wanted to jump out more because it helps to keep the chroma up, but still keep the rock cool and appear to be in the shade, a little bit in the foreground of this slash of light. This slash of light, which, by the way, the band was too consistent in thickness going across the painting. I decided to feather it out a little bit on the left-hand side. I think that helped, graduating the value, from higher to lower as we get closer. I'm so tempted to put a slash or a dash here and there of something, and I'm just holding off. I don't know if it's necessary. I'm going to live with it upstairs for a while, but I'll know pretty soon. Also, as soon as it goes into better light. Now, it's under good light for me, for me to work on it. It'll be under more realistic light when it hangs in the living room. So we'll see. What else have we got to say about that? Yeah, so I'm not going to put any slash in here. The only paint that I think I have to put on it is a signature. All right, oh yeah, I guess I'll talk about colors here. Okay, the sky, cobalt blue, burnt sienna, hints of yellow ochre, and white. Trunks are all, including this one, burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, and white, with the tiniest hints of alizarin crimson mixed in here and there. Distant bush, this foliage here as well, the background stuff, ultramarine blue and burnt sienna and a bit of white. The closer bits of foliage, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, and quite a bit more yellow ochre and white. This grass, ultramarine blue and a bit of yellow ochre and a bit of raw umber, just to keep it toned down. I think I've mixed a little bit of alizarin crimson into it too, but just the tiniest hints, just to add a subtle flavor to it, not to really change the color too much. Here we've got ultramarine blue, burnt sienna, bit of yellow ochre, and white here and here. Then back here we have cobalt blue, yeah, a hint of cobalt blue, and also ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson. Coming on to this grass, that is from the most intense areas. We're looking at cad yellow pale, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, a hint of ultramarine blue. Working our way back. Actually, down here I've got a bit of raw umber mixed in with that. And working our way back, I've gone into more raw umber and yellow ochre with a bit of ultramarine blue and white. This very dark spot up here is pretty much just raw umber and yellow ochre. Yeah, with a bit of, that's true, with a bit of ultramarine blue in it. This bit of rock sticking out, this is ultramarine blue, raw umber, and alizarin crimson and white. And did I say raw umber? I should have, because there is raw umber in it as well. And here we're looking in the lighter area of the rock, we're looking at yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, white, bits of burnt sienna, all the way back into here and into here. Here, same mixture, it's just that I've used a little more ultramarine blue. We've gone a little bluer as it recedes into the shadow. This rock, as I mentioned, yeah, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and raw umber. And the cap of the rock is cobalt blue, raw umber, and white. My little undercut here, cave, that's ultramarine blue, raw umber, burnt sienna, and just tiny bits of white. This mineralizing ironstone, that's what I'm gonna look at it as. That's this vein of rock that's growing, or was growing, and now is I guess you'd call it tellurides or tellurides, mineralizing stone. That's what did I use there? Cad red medium, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, raw umber. I lightened just a few flecks of it here where there's direct sunlight on the rock. That's cad red medium. Oh no, you know what? Cad red medium and yellow ochre. I didn't want it to be too intense a red, so yellow ochre, which is actually greenish, toned it down just a little bit and added a bit of white to it. Okay, that takes care of the rocks. I think the water is, well, again, ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, bits of burnt sienna mixed in, and white. And I'm using more white, higher, and yellow ochre up in the upper areas, and I've really gone more towards ultramarine blue and yellow ochre, almost really straight ultramarine blue and yellow ochre for these areas. Yeah, hints of white, always a little bit of white. I just put a slash in here, just a bit of cobalt and ultramarine blues mixed together, and a bit of white, just a drop, just a sort of a point of interest. I think that's about it. If you have any questions about the colors or anything else about the painting or anything at all, just drop them in the comments. I'll pop the camera off the stand now, or off the tripod, and we'll do a close-up and have a look around at the painting. Well, there we have it. I'm just going to start on the upper left, and we'll zoom in a little bit. I'll just pick the odd point of interest, maybe to show you the knife work a little more closely. I like that broken sky like that. It's fairly strong without being too strong. Direct brush strokes, but due to its lower chroma and mostly lower value, thankfully it remains somewhat subdued. Turns out there's a property not too far from our place where they are putting in literally hundreds of loads of dirt. Maybe they're preloading to put a barn up or something. I don't know what they're doing, but wow, they're bringing in a lot of dirt in. So that, coupled with a recent gas leak near us and some closures on a road that's parallel to us that services a large urban population, traffic here lately has been just terrible. So thankfully there will be an end to that at some point. Okay, down to these rocks. I know they're just little cracks, but sometimes it's worthwhile putting a few little bits of interest here and there. Somebody will look at that and they'll interpret it in their own minds what it is. Well, you pretty much know what it is, just loose gravel and stones and what have you. Bit of a strange formation back there, but I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. It's subdued enough. It's on the edge of the painting. It's enough to keep things interesting. And just zoom in on this one too. I like how this floating trunk worked out. Toned down a little on the left, because again we're getting closer to the edge of the painting. a little more intense as we approach the focal area, the most intense sunlight. I guess I should stay zoomed in here for a minute. I'll just show you these little dribs and drabs of red that I put in there. Not enough to provide competition to other areas, but keeps things interesting if you can vary your colors and throw little bits of higher chroma in here and there. In our cave, a little bit of a different style, a little using a knife that's a little less loaded with color, scraping across the tooth of the canvas. A little more, well, I won't call it smeary because there's not enough paint to really smear it too much, but I think you know what I mean. Okay, and it was necessary to darken this quite a bit with a little patch, and I'm glad I did. I think it was a good idea, wise choice. And our blue rock and our water, which, whoops, a little too close in there. You know, it has variety. It actually has quite a bit of variety, but it's fairly subtle on the lower part of the water. I'm counting on that to be adequate to provide interest in the water without distracting from the focal area. That's really the single reason I don't want to put any slashes of light down in the foreground in the water or too close to you. I like that effect of yeah, just a slice of sunlight shining through, catching that bluff area and the water, and then as it comes closer to us, it's just in the shadow. Okay, there's our painting. Thanks very much for coming along. And what's next? I'm not sure. I'm going to do something smaller and maybe use a brush next time just for a bit of a change. Have a good day, guys. Thanks. Bye-bye.